Hello. Hi, Jelissa.
How are you, Yolanda?
I'm okay, thank you. Can you please tell us a bit about yourself and your background?
Yes, I'm 27 years young. I am from Baltimore, Maryland, born and raised. And as of right now, I am an up and coming creator and advocate for mental health. I actually went to college to study psychology, clinical and behavioral psychology. And I'm also an tarot reader, an intuitive reader as well. Something I'm getting into. And I'm a writer, a storyteller.
Wow. So that's an amazing background. I'm a psychology graduate as well, and I'll be hosting this Black Mental Health Matters session for today. I think we're going to be. Go on.
Oh no, I'm just really excited.
I think we're going to be discussing systematic racism in the Black community. I think we are in different continents, so we have different understandings of how these systems operate. I think on a slightly global scale between the UK and America. Can you just, tell us a bit more about your experiences and such?
Yes, being a Black woman in America definitely has its challenges when it comes to whether that's economic, healthcare, when it comes, especially mental health care. There's now in society, we're seeing that there's a lot of things that we didn't know, a lot of things that are being uncovered, a lot of truths that are being revealed for the lack of accountability and the lack of care when it comes to Black women and Black people in the healthcare industry as well, which is really something that sits very well close to my heart, especially when it comes to how we buy homes, how we think about money. Where we get our resources from or the lack of resources that are presented to us, right? And so even though there's a lot of people, Black people, people of indigenous backgrounds who are actually moving out or realizing like, we don't have to live in the struggle. The struggle doesn't have to be as real as we make it. I think it's important to highlight the fact that healing as well is very, very, very important in healing these traumas so we don't pass them on to our grandchildren and to our children, and so that we can heal those who came before us as well. And all of that begins with self when it comes to me, learning how to love yourself, learning how to, just be honest with yourself. Yes, this happened, but learning how to forgive yourself, Yolanda, I think is so important. And then learning how to navigate through these actual systems so that we can cultivate a stronger culture within ourselves and therefore our community.
I couldn't agree more. I think it's very difficult to navigate, especially when you have like a gateway out of that struggle, like you said. The sort of like entrenched practices within our culture that may make it not as easy or streamlined to kind of be successful. I think in my experience, this is something that I've noticed that a lot of Black families, young Black families, are starting to work on that trauma that we carry to kind of make sure that the next generation doesn't have all of this baggage to carry. Um, Do you have like any kind of like sort of ideas, I think, that you've mentioned about how there are things that hold us back when, when we want to kind of get away from that struggle or that inherited sort of poverty in a way?
Yes, I definitely think that, or believe, once a person, like for me, I'll tell you my story. When I started understanding that I am more than just a Black woman, that there's power in my lineage, there's power that runs through my blood from my ancestors, and understanding that there were times when, like, I don't know if you ever heard of Tulsa, where there was actually a Black Wall Street here. So we are known to do things, including just building America up as well. And I would love to hear your story as well after. We are well aware of how to build. We're well aware of how to to mental. It became mental slavery. It became very much a lack of mindset, a lack of believing, a lack of knowing. And what I had to realize is a lot of Black people didn't want to go to therapy. A lot of Black people did not want to, involve themselves with matters that came with understanding what happened and how we can get past it. It was just more of, this is what I was taught, this is how I was learned. And I was drenched in trauma.
Sorry,
So
I think I missed some of what you were saying. I'm so sorry. I think there's something going on with the connection. So let's bear that in mind. Sorry.
it's okay. Yeah, I see that happen. So basically, you were asking me, what do I think that we can do? We can definitely start by going within ourselves and having more grace with ourselves. We can start by going to touch on those subjects that we really don't want to look at. Shadow work is so important when it comes to mental health, and overcoming the systematic racism that was placed upon us.
Okay, so with systematic racism, I think obviously a lot of people are aware of what this mean of this concept, but what is
Mhm.
your understanding of these systems that have inbuilt practices within them that hold us back? What is your experience of encountering or experiences of other people that you've spoken to in this context?
Well, for me, I'll go straight into healthcare, because mental health is definitely close to my heart. I worked as an intern for a Black-owned therapy or therapeutic. They call it a metamorphosis institution to help with Black women and Black men. Um, just have a place of peace. There's a lot of strength that we feel like we need to have. There's a lot of being strong. There's a lot of, you can take it. You can pull up your bootstraps and just tie them up and just keep moving, instead of just learning to, it's okay to be affected. It's okay to have feelings of guilt, of grief, and learning how to accept those and not allow yourself to be put down by them, meaning that I cannot believe that I feel upset about this. I shouldn't, you should be able to feel your feelings, when it comes to especially the mental health care system. You should be able to go to therapy or feel comfortable enough to go to therapy to say, listen, I didn't have the best childhood, and I'm trying to work through that. Me in particular, I've gone to counseling. I had to deal with anger issues, growing up, and learning how to cultivate with that, because I was prepared and raised to be strong, independent, and Black, and it's nothing wrong with those things, but it definitely removes how I need, as a Black woman, how I need to depend on other Black women and other Black men and just other people in general. I don't have to be strong all the time. I don't have to bear the weight of the world on me. It's okay to be feminine. It's okay to be soft. And I think that that's something that a lot of, like, in this system that we have here, especially in America, we can take it. They can do it, and it's just like, maybe I can't take it. And it's okay if you can't take it. It's okay if you don't want to be that strong Black woman. It's okay if you want to lay in a bed of flowers. It's okay to be you. And that's something that I want to just put out there to people. It's so important. It's so important to know who you are, know what you like to do, and not allow society to tell you this is what you should do. And especially when it comes to emotional intelligence, emotional health, and mental health. Why? Because the mind is all, and that is where everything else stems from. So that's my experience.
No, I couldn't agree more. I think there is definitely an element of shame with people admitting that they're struggling and they can't cope. And I think it's something that's really rooted in our Black community as well. That if somebody comes to you and they're saying, "I'm going to therapy because of depression or childhood issues," it's
Mm-hmm.
like, why are you not coping? And what's wrong with you?
Exactly.
Um, so I think already makes it very difficult for people to access these systems, and when they do get there, there's no space for them. The professionals that are delivering this support, they have a lack of understanding, because I think just mental health and just the psychology, the theories and the things that they focus on, a lot of times sort of dismiss the experience of the Black woman or the Black man. So I think, yeah, that is a really big problem.
Definitely. If you don't mind me asking, what's some of your actual experiences or something that you've taken a look at that really personally was like, listen, we could change this when it comes to psychology and mental health in the Black community?
I think for me it's education, especially when I did my degree. I really struggled with just the whitewash, and it wasn't until after I'd graduated and I started to kind of self-direct a lot of my own reading. I discovered so many different Black psychologists, people who were interested in the Black experience, and I was really shocked that this is something that was not, we didn't even discuss it at all. It wasn't even an option within my degree. So I think when I graduated and we had following the George Floyd, you know, that summer was massive. So I wrote to my tutors and I said, I really feel like the way that you're delivering this course is definitely, it doesn't take into account a lot of different things in society. So I think that's one thing that was important to me. But
Mhm.
even in our education, like if we're talking about systemic racism, I've got a sister who goes to primary school here in the UK, and
Mhm.
we live in a relatively sort of there's not much diversity. So in her everyday life at school, somebody's calling her names or making fun of her hair. And it's like kids are going to do things like that because she does look different. But
Mhm.
it's like within the school, they don't have anything in place to kind of respond to that. So it's a
Mhm.
continuing sort of cycle of abuse and racism that's not picked up because the system does not account for such experiences.
Yes.
But yeah.
Definitely the lack of recognition is is massive, and it is so just like how can you miss a whole people? Like you can't miss us in any kind of way, down to the hair. And I would like to actually point out, because you have you made a great point about education. When I actually began my journey to understand myself as a Black woman and what I was seeing and what I was being experienced and exposed to, it definitely caught my eye that only certain types of racial matters, I should say, because it was really only slavery that was taught in schools here. By the same book. I don't know if anyone would know who Tim McGraw-Hill is here in America, but we were all taught history, mathematics, as well as and just along different subjects by the same book. It was never a different perspective. And in a lot of schools here, even in the Midwest, a lot of schools weren't taught about racism. They weren't taught about it. And I think that definitely makes a difference when it involves letting other cultures know this is where we are and this is why we are here, so far as in today's society. So slavery happened. Oppression is happening. Systematic oppression is still happening. And this is why we're in this constructs that we're in, that we're trying to break out of, that I see a lot of younger millennials and generational X trying to break us out of, right? Even when it comes to learning, they're actually taking out slavery because they're saying that it's very much I guess it's too vulgar because of what happened out of the schools and the textbooks here. And I'm like, that's not okay. Not only you're not involving the actual history, you're rewriting history, and it's not fair for little girls like me, for little girls like your sister and yourself. And I'm speaking to our inner child now, who really grew up feeling as if though there is something wrong with me because I'm different, and that is not true. That's what makes us great, and that's what I want to point out. That's what makes us beautiful. That's what makes us different. And that's what makes us become whole enough to be able to accept others, for who they are.
And I guess for so long, this whole difference and how, you're saying that, we are different and unique and we should celebrate it. But I think for a while, it was like, no, there's no difference between me and a Caucasian woman or Caucasian man, because we wanted to fit in, we wanted to assimilate. So I think a lot of us are still dealing with this sort of, I mean, I'm African, so we have this sort of colonial hangover that's like, we still want that proximity to whiteness, and I don't know, just all those sort of privileges that come with it. And I think
Mhm.
in our Black community, we're not honest with this, ugly side of,
Yes.
yeah, yeah,
Look, and that's okay. It's not ugly. It is what we were taught. That's what we were taught. We were taught that white is right.
yeah.
White was right. And that's far from the truth, because if you look at their culture, they studied our culture. They cultivated our culture, and they did in the best ways. Um, and they assimilated to our culture while putting down. Let's start here. I didn't know until the internet that there were Black people in all different continents. That was, I did not know. I was like, what? There are Black people in the UK. There are Black people in Australia. What? In Asia? This is so magnificent, and everyone is different, but everyone has something in common. They were being pushed towards the whiter side of things, or that side of things. I like to make a joke, even down to vanilla ice cream. It used to be just dark as bus, and then now it's nice and white. And I don't think that it's anything wrong with learning about other cultures. I just think there is a very big injustice when it comes to putting a certain people down to elevate yourself. I feel like there is no difference between us as humans, but there is a difference in between our culture. And when we learn to understand and cultivate that culture, that is where wholeness is created within the world. But one is not above the other, but one cannot be pushed down or pressured down or watered down in order to elevate another. That's where the imbalance is. And it hits the
Definitely.
mental so hard.
I do think we're coming into an exciting age, though, where a lot of these organizations and companies are realizing that if you have a diverse workforce, that's like more ideas, different perspectives that
Yes.
are being brought to the table. But I don't know how much of that is genuine. But the change is happening.
Yes. I agree. I don't think that it's going to start. I think everything when it comes to capitalism starts from business first, money first. But I'd like to say that there are a lot of people within the Caucasian community, within other communities, that are actually seeing the brilliance in just opening up the doors for us to be who we are. Like I pointed to my hair just now, because there's a lot of states who are just like, if your hair's like this, then you can't work here. And that's in the workforce, or in how people are being hired nowadays. And it's like, my hair is a part of me. It doesn't mean that I am any less smart. It doesn't mean I'm any less brilliant. It doesn't mean that my ideas are any less just in authentic, or that doesn't mean that I am not an expert in my field. this is just my hair. It's how it grows from my scalp. And that includes locks. A lot of people were actually having to cut off their locks or being asked to remove themselves from workforce because of it. So I want to say in Texas, the law was just passed that, you can no longer do that. You can't do that to a people, because that's like telling someone of a Muslim religion, you cannot wear your hijab. And that is who you are. You know what I'm saying?
It's just this whole hair situation, honestly, even in the UK, for us, I don't think there's any laws in place, or a lot of outward discrimination when it comes to that. But
Mhm.
I've noticed that there's just like it almost is like it doesn't exist in a way in how our shops were operating. Like you'd have to go to, like we call it, the ends, to get your hair bits, because in a normal Boots or Superdrug, they wouldn't sell those things. But in the last, I would say maybe 3 years, they've actually started to sell Afro products.
Mhm.
And these things happening, and like how did we not even think this was a problem before? But
Exactly.
I think there's now a stipulation for hairdressers, when they're completing their qualifications, that they have to be able to do Afro hair, whereas like before it wasn't a requirement at all. You can have a certificate saying that you're a professional and qualified, but you can't actually do a lot of Afro hair or people who've got different textures.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think that's exciting. That's
That is
exciting.
very exciting. And that is very much where we're moving into, and I'm proud of that, honest and truly. I really am. And it's funny you call them little bits. We call them hair stores here, or this any black women, they know it's like you have to go to the hair store, and that's where all of our supplies is. And I actually just went across the country for the first time this year, and I was so surprised. In some areas they don't have these stores, and I'm like, you need to cultivate this, for they're more than just a one type of person here. And even not just in our race, but in other races as well, other ethnicities, it's more important, like you said, to straighten the hair, or to, it's important to learn how to do these things for a certain type of aesthetic. But there are different aesthetics, and now the world is opening itself up to it. So now we have to open up our mind to removing the construct of this was right. No, this is now. Now we have to move into evolution, I should say, and moving and going towards learning to love ourselves, learning to love every part of ourselves. And that doesn't mean that we don't get to wear wigs. That doesn't mean that, you don't, if you don't want to wear braids, if you're different ethnicity, you can't wear braids. I believe everyone should be cultivated and loved, but as long as it's as long as it's put out there for what it is. Like, this is African culture, this is African American culture. You know what I'm saying? This is not to be deemed at, or demonized, I should say. Which is, I purposely wore my hair out because I took my wig off for this. But I purposely wore my hair out, and I put my big hoop earrings in to let you know, like, this is who I am. And it doesn't make me any less of a brilliant mind. And I want to put it out there that is what we internalize, especially as children. If you get children very, very young, their minds are still growing. And then they'll grow into thinking and believing that what they have going on is wrong, and that's not true. Absolutely.
But I think it's really difficult to unlearn a lot of this, because we can have this in our homes, and we can build this nurturing and accepting community, but in the outside world the reality is very different, I think.
Mhm.
If you're a young black woman and you're trying to make it in your profession, or you're trying to date, or you're just out doing your thing, we have to be honest with what we're encountering, and
Mhm.
how different people are not sort of set up to kind of like accept a lot of that sort of racism. So the easier route is to just kind of like assimilate and to hide what's going on underneath. But yeah, I think that's
I
interesting.
definitely, definitely agree, Yolanda. That's why it's so important I like to, I truly believe that if you are strong enough in who you are, you'll be able to teach them, well, this may be how you grow up, but this is how I grew up. I'm pretty sure there's certain traditions that you have that I don't know, traditions that I have that you don't know, and we can literally sit and talk and say, listen, this is how I grew up. This is what I'm used to. This is what my parents have taught me. And that's the importance of knowing thyself, because it's so strong that no one can shake it outside of you.
Yeah.
And that is so important nowadays, very, very much so. When it comes to education, when it comes to political, when it comes to criminal justice and economics, all of those systems, it all starts with us and how we are. Are we going to allow ourselves to assimilate now? Is the question now I'd like to ask, with everything that is being everything that's being approved or being exposed, because there's a lot of truth in this area, in this era that's happening now. Are we going to allow ourselves to assimilate, or are we going to stay true to who we are? That doesn't mean I can't rock my wigs, because I'm going to rock my wigs. But you know what I'm saying? I'm going to also be myself, and I'm going to explain, this may be different for you, but this is who I am. And I'm not going to meet it. I'm not going to meet people with their energy. If it's like, oh, you shouldn't wear your hair like this, it's like, well, this is why I wear my hair like this, or this is why I wear my earrings like this, or this is why I feel as if though more Black women and Black men should be cultivated in the mental health community and learning about thyself so that we can heal this. And I think we're off to a great start, but we have so much more to go.
I think we just shouldn't be afraid, like you said, to pull it up when we see it. When we see this dismissal, this lack of thought towards Black people, we should be loud in our displeasure. I was recently talking to a friend about contraception. She's on the patch, and she was showing me the patches. And I was like, oh, okay, because they were beige. And we were
Mm-hmm.
talking about that. And she didn't understand why I had a problem with the fact that, the patch was beige. And I was saying, do they come in any other colors? And she was like, I don't think so. And it's a very tiny detail, but it's a lack of thought, I think, because, all women of all different backgrounds use contraception. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I thought that was very interesting.
That brings me to something that was similar with the Band-Aids. They started making Band-Aids that were actually different neutral colors of skin tone so that it's like you're being included. It's all about inclusion. We're not saying that, you know, you're wrong. I mean, you're wrong for oppressing it and you're wrong for only trying to see it from one perspective. But it's important to have that inclusion, right? Something as small as a Band-Aid, something as small as the patch, something as small as going to the hospital and, being able to say to your doctor, I'm not feeling too well as, a Black woman, and not being pushed aside because of that feeling, or because of you are Black, or because of your healthcare provider or insurance. Something as small as that makes a huge difference in the mental and how it is literally taken in, and then how we are pulling it on ourselves like, oh, well, maybe I didn't do something right.
Yeah, I think especially like not just mental health, just like physical health systems. I think in the UK they were saying that, Black women are more likely to have negative birth outcomes than any other race in the UK, just because you're being dismissed if you're saying I have this problem.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to listen to you or give you the proper support that you might need.
That's so, girl, we hit all the topics here and I loved it. This was amazing. Thank you so much for talking with me about this. I really appreciate it, and sharing your perspective, my dear. It definitely gave me a lot more perspective, just because we're on different continents, right? To see that we're going through the same thing. It's a worldwide thing. And we are definitely on our way to cultivating ourselves, our self-love, so that we can give it out to other people as in what it is and who we are.
I've learned so much from you as well and your experience. Honestly, it's been an amazing chat. So thank you so much for your time and for opening up. It's been so lovely.
Thank you as well, my dear. I really hope you have a wonderful, phenomenal rest of your day. And definitely remember, like, you are beautiful. You are valued. You are valued.
Thank you. Thank you. And enjoy the holiday seasons as well.
You do the same, my love.
Okay. Bye bye.
Bye bye.